I have been writing for about 17 years, since 2008. And this one is a book of short stories.
David Walliams is a name that millions of people know. He is famous for making people laugh on television and for writing children's books that are loved all over the world. Over 50 million copies of his books have been sold, and he was once called the new Roald Dahl because of how popular they became. As a judge on Britain's Got Talent, he charmed audiences with his humor, kindness, and emotional reactions. To the outside world, he seemed like a man who had everything: fame, money, success, and admiration. But behind the bright smile and witty jokes, there was a very different story. David's life has been filled with struggles, heartbreak, and hidden battles that few people ever imagined. His journey has not only been about entertaining others, but also about surviving his own mind. For decades, he quietly fought depression, loneliness, and suicidal thoughts. The public only saw the laughter, but the truth was much darker. His story is not only about scandals and career highs, but also about how deep pain can live behind even the brightest public image. The life of David Walliams shows us that no matter how much success someone has, it doesn't mean they are free from sadness or struggle. In fact, his life is a clear reminder that mental health problems can affect anyone, even those who seem to be living their dream. This article will take you through his early childhood, his rise to fame, the deep scars of bullying and depression, his personal relationships, the public controversies, and how he has tried to find peace in writing and charity work. David Walliams' secret battles will open your eyes and break your heart, because his story is one of both laughter and deep pain. David Walliams is one of the most recognized entertainers in Britain. He made millions laugh on television, sold over 50 million children's books, and became a household name through his work on Britain's Got Talent. To many, he was the funny judge who could not hold back tears when he saw an emotional act. To children, he was the magical writer who created stories like Gangsta Granny and Ratburger. To the outside world, David seemed like a man who had everything: wealth, talent, success, and respect. But behind this cheerful image, his life carried a darker truth. From a very young age, David battled with depression, bullying, and loneliness. While people saw his smile on stage, they could not see the deep sadness that often followed him home. Born on August 20th, 1971, in Merton, London, he came from a modest family. His father worked for London Transport, and his mother was a hospital lab worker. Their home was small and ordinary, but even as a child, David stood out. He loved performing and often pretended to be different characters in front of the mirror. His mother noticed that he could spend hours talking to imaginary friends, but she also saw the sadness in his eyes. At just 7 years old, he joined the Sea Scouts hoping to make friends. Instead, he was bullied for being different. The cruelty became so unbearable that he once tried to take his own life by hanging himself from a tree with his neckerchief. Adults claimed it was an accident, but David later admitted it was his first suicide attempt. This tragic moment marked the beginning of a lifelong struggle with mental health. The world would one day know him as a star, but at that time, he was simply a lonely boy who already felt broken. David's school years were filled with more challenges. At Reigate Grammar School, he faced brutal bullying from classmates who mocked his accent and dramatic personality. He was beaten, locked in cupboards, and humiliated on a daily basis. One of the worst incidents happened when older students forced him to perform comedy routines in the school toilets while they threw wet toilet paper at him. Instead of feeling proud of his talent, he felt ashamed. The bullying became so bad that his weight dropped dangerously, and teachers often noticed bruises on him. At just 12 years old, after being stripped during a cruel prank at the Sea Scouts, he attempted suicide again using his school tie. His mother discovered him unconscious, and he was rushed to the hospital. Doctors were shocked that someone so young had such serious suicidal thoughts. For many teenagers, this would have been the end of their dreams. But David found escape in comedy. He began buying old comedy records with his weekly allowance and memorizing routines from Monty Python and Rowan Atkinson. Alone in his room, he would perform for the mirror, often dressed in his mother's clothes, creating characters that allowed him to forget his pain. While other kids played football or hung out with friends, David spent hours practicing voices, jokes, and impressions. His depression did not disappear, but comedy became his shield. It gave him a way to hide his sadness behind laughter. By the time he joined the National Youth Theatre at 13, he had already learned how to wear a mask, smiling in public, while suffering in silence. He met Matt Lucas there, who would later become his creative partner. But even friendship could not completely heal the loneliness he felt. Deep inside, David carried the belief that he was unwanted, and this feeling would follow him into adulthood, no matter how much success he achieved. When David went to the University of Bristol to study drama in 1989, He hoped life would finally improve, but even at university, depression followed him. That Christmas, at just 18 years old, he overdosed on pills in his childhood bedroom. His mother found him barely alive and rushed him to the hospital. He later admitted that her love was the only reason he survived that day. This was one of several attempts during his university years. Still, he continued to build his comedy career. He joined student groups, acted in plays, and even performed with a troupe that included future star Simon Pegg. David's stage name also changed around this time. When he tried to join the Actors Union, he discovered that another David Walliams already existed. He opened a phone book, picked a random name, and became David Walliams. His father felt hurt, believing his son was rejecting the family name. But for David, it was about escape. He wanted to reinvent himself, to stop being the sad boy who never fit in. His first solo performance at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 1992 was praised by critics, but behind the scenes, he was suffering from daily panic attacks and extreme stress. Still, he kept performing, using humor as his survival tool. By the mid-1990s, David reunited with Matt Lucas, and together they began creating comedy sketches. Their early work, like MASH and Peas and Rock Profile, gained attention for being funny but also controversial. Walliams often disappeared during filming, leaving Lucas to cover for him, because he was still battling episodes of depression. While the audience laughed at the comedy, few realized the pain hidden behind it. This contrast between his public success and private suffering would become a defining theme of his life. In the early 2000s, David Walliams and Matt Lucas created Little Britain, first as a radio show and later as a television series. The program quickly became one of the most popular comedy shows in the UK, drawing millions of viewers. Characters like Emily Howard, who would loudly declare, "I'm a lady," in a high-pitched voice, became cultural icons. At its peak, Little Britain was watched by nearly 10 million people, and it earned millions in DVD sales. The live tour broke records, becoming the longest-running UK comedy tour at the time. Walliams and Lucas performed for huge audiences, making people laugh across the country. But behind the laughter, David was sinking deeper into despair. On New Year's Day 2003, while still working on the show, he attempted suicide by cutting his wrists and throat with a knife. Later that year, after a painful breakup, he tried to hang himself. He later wrote in his diary, "I didn't really want to die. I just didn't want to live." Despite these terrifying struggles, he kept performing night after night, hiding his pain behind his characters. The success of Little Britain also brought controversy. Some sketches were criticized as offensive, especially those that mocked sensitive subjects. In America, the Little Britain USA version was even accused of racism and blackface, leading to its cancellation. Although David became a household name, the fame came at a cost. He was exhausted, emotionally unstable, and constantly fighting depression. He often checked into mental health clinics for treatment, but his illness never fully went away. The public saw him as a confident comedian, but in private, he was a man drowning in sadness, using comedy as both a career and a shield against his own mind. In 2012, David Walliams joined Britain's Got Talent as a judge, alongside Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, and Alicia Dixon. His humor, warmth, and emotional side quickly won over the audience. Millions tuned in to see his funny comments and touching moments, such as when he pressed the golden buzzer for a children's choir that moved him to tears. For a while, it seemed like David had finally found a stable, positive role that brought him happiness. The show became one of the UK's biggest TV hits, with over 11 million viewers. But in 2020, things took a dark turn. During filming breaks, David made crude and offensive remarks about contestants, not realizing his microphone was still recording. These private jokes, which included sexual and insulting comments, were leaked to the press in 2022. The public was shocked. For a man who had built a reputation as a family-friendly author and TV personality, the scandal was devastating. He apologized, but the damage was done. After 10 years on the show, his contract was not renewed, and he was replaced by Bruno Tonioli. Court documents later revealed that he lost nearly $1.5 million in future work, along with canceled projects and book events. David even sued the production company, claiming his private conversations had been recorded unfairly for years. The scandal left his career in ruins, and once again, his mental health suffered greatly. It was a reminder that no matter how much success he achieved, David's struggles with depression and self-destructive behavior continued to follow him. While David's television career faced ups and downs, his second career as a children's author flourished. His first book, The Boy in the Dress, 2008, told the story of a boy who likes wearing girls' clothes. The book faced criticism from some parents, but it also won praise for encouraging acceptance and understanding. It was later adapted into a film and a stage musical. Over the years, David wrote many more successful books, including Gangsta Granny, Ratburger, and The World's Worst Children. His books were translated into over 50 languages and sold in millions of copies, making him one of the most successful children's writers of his generation. Writing became a form of therapy for him, a way to turn his pain into stories that entertained and inspired young readers. At the same time, David also took on physical challenges for charity. He swam the English Channel in 2006, raising nearly $1 million for sport relief. In 2011, he swam 140 miles along the River Thames, even though the polluted water made him seriously ill. He later admitted that these extreme challenges were not just about charity. They were also his way of punishing himself and fighting the darkness in his mind. On a personal level, David married model Lara Stone in 2010, and they had a son, Alfred, in 2013. Sadly, their marriage ended in 2015 after years of tension caused by his depression and mood swings. The divorce was painful, both emotionally and financially. Losing his marriage and being separated from his son made his mental health even harder to manage. Despite these struggles, he kept writing and raising money for charity, trying to balance his personal pain with his public responsibilities. David's struggles with mental health were not just personal, they were also part of his family history. In 2020, while filming the show Who Do You Think You Are?, he discovered that his great-grandfather had spent over 40 years in a mental asylum after suffering from shell shock in World War I. This discovery was painful but also explained a lot to David. Mental illness seemed to run through his family, and he often felt he had inherited a deep sadness that he could not escape. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with severe depression, and he spent time at the Priory Clinic, a well-known mental health hospital in the UK. Even though he received treatment, he admitted that his dark thoughts never fully disappeared. At times, he used charity work, comedy, and writing to distract himself, but the depression always returned. He once said that he often smiled in public because he knew people expected it, but when he was alone, he felt broken. This honesty about his struggles made many people admire him even more, because it showed that fame and success do not protect anyone from mental illness. After the 2022 scandal, David Walliams' television career slowed down, but his books continued to sell in huge numbers. By 2022, he had sold more than 50 million copies worldwide, and his stories remained popular with children everywhere. In 2024, he reunited with Matt Lucas to work on a new podcast, hoping to rebuild his career in a more careful way. They promised their new work would be funny but not offensive, showing that they had learned from past mistakes. At the same time, David continued to write new books, release annuals, and go on book tours, especially in countries like India, where his stories were hugely successful. Even as he kept entertaining millions, he spoke more openly about his depression, suicide attempts, and the role his mother played in saving his life. He admitted that fear of life, of love, and of failure had been with him since childhood. Yet he also said that writing helped him survive, because it gave him purpose. His story is heartbreaking, but it also carries an important lesson. Behind every smile, even behind the mask of a comedian, there can be deep pain. Mental illness does not care about fame or fortune. David Walliams' journey shows how important it is to talk about mental health, to support loved ones, and to remember that even those who make us laugh the most may be hurting inside. His past is filled with darkness, but his courage to keep creating, keep swimming, and keep living proves that survival is possible even when life feels impossible. His struggles may break your heart, but they also remind us to show kindness, because we never truly know what someone else is going through.